This Japanese maple and this Chinese elm have something in common. They also have someone in common, and it's something that blights all of our bonsai trees at some point through our journey. And it's something that if you don't get on top of and learn to manage and deal with, will destroy and ruin any hope of you ever producing what we would consider a high quality or top class bonsai, and certainly stop these two from ever seeing the sight of a show table. But do you want to know what that is and how exactly I discovered the problem? Hi, this is Xavier. Welcome to our bonsai retreat, and right here in front of us we've got the second of two air-layered Katsuras that I took off a mother tree over 18 months ago, thanks to the great advice from Jelle of GrowingBonsai. Well, for those of you who've watched my videos before, and certainly in 2024, you'll know that Jelle visited the bonsai retreat in September, and I was lucky enough to have his knowledge and experience and this fly in my ear, which is absolutely... Can you believe it? A fly flew into my ear. Probably had something interesting to say to me. But yeah, he came in here and he really did, he was really impressed with so many of the trees. But he highlighted probably the bane of most bonsai enthusiasts' lives, the thing that sometimes we just ignore. Not on purpose, but because it just seems too big and too hard to handle. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't just that Katsura that he raised the issue with. It was also this really nice imported Chinese elm, which I got at trade prices from my favourite place, Xavier Nursery, back in 2017. But he managed to pick out just one small flaw. In fact, let's skip back to September 2024 and hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
So look at this tree. This is also in Xavier's garden, and here you see this very big ugly scar. Can you actually see this? Look here, there's a massive pruning scar. And I look at all his trees and they're all refined, and you look at this scar. Xavier, how do you explain this one?
I took all the sort of secondary branches I didn't want off when I first got it, before I even thought about it. And that wound was already there, and I just thought it's already there. I didn't really give it any thought at all. It didn't seem a big part for me.
Now it is late in the season, so I don't really recommend now working on the scars. It works a lot better if you do it at the start of the growing season, because obviously the whole growing season ahead, the wound can close over. But next to you have a nice concave cutter. And that is of course the tool that you use for this. If you use these, you can go onto the wound and you just cut back the old part of the wound, hollow it out so that the wound is actually deeper than the rest of the trunk. What you see here, this was just cut with your regular garden shears. They probably just cut the top off and then regrew. And this is typical for nursery material.
Now, clearly, he said that very tongue-in-cheek, but he did bring up a big point and linked to one of his other videos in which he said we should challenge ourselves each year to do something different, to improve something. And I picked two things. The first thing was to start getting on top of actual fertilising regime and stuff like that, i.e. actually fertilise the trees. And the second one was to actually start looking at wound healing, taking my bonsai to the next credible step, and when I possibly can, help the tree heal what are pretty horrendous and unnecessary scars. Because you know what? There are some trees that are going to be scarred and you can't do anything about them. Often the answer is to display the tree the other way and accept that you've got an ugly scar on the back. And we'll have a look at one or two trees that I believe fall in that category. We're also going to have a look at a massive 3-foot Yamadori tree that I'm going to have to take a big branch off, and we'll talk about the potential solutions I need to look at for wound healing and discuss how long it's going to take. We might look at growing beds for a couple of Yamadoris, and indeed we're going to tackle not only this one but the Katsura Maple that Jelle also highlighted.
And I'm disappointed with you.
Why?
This cut. Why didn't you clean it up?
That was always like that. Is that
So basically what I'm trying to say to you is it is okay to leave a stump. You leave it for a year and then the sap flow to the top branches is redirected. But at that point, after a year, you need to clean this up, otherwise the bark will never grow over it. And in fact, you also didn't clean this wound up.
No. So first of all, we'll deal with this one. And the reason we're going to deal with this one first is because it is actually the easiest. And for many of you, it's the sort of scar that most likely you'll be looking to deal with. It occupies quite a large area. It's nearly a centimetre across, and when you consider that the trunk width diameter is probably not much wider than it, it actually represents quite a substantial wound. And it also protrudes out probably about 4 millimetres beyond the actual line of the trunk. Now, the key point that Jelle said is when you're looking at wound healing, you need to have two things. One of them was these, a concave cutter. You need to make sure it's big enough and has sufficient digging power that it's actually going to take it not only to the point of the trunk, say we were doing this wound here to the actual point there, it actually has to go in deeper, because what we're looking for is over time the exposed cambium areas to roll over and create a much more natural looking healing wound. In fact, I've just found this trident here, and here's a perfect example of that donutty or that tire shape we're talking about. This is probably on its second year of healing. Great big branch, and what we've got here is all the cambium healing round. What I'm actually going to end up doing is, with a blade, opening that inside part all up again, so that in another year it will grow further and further over this dead part here. And then of course we also get just the other extremes, which is, a typical Yamadori dig tree, where you've got these great big fat trunks, you're removing great big fat branches. The bigger the branch you remove, especially the less that you've got above it, the longer and harder it is to actually create a realistic healing wound. And in this instance, you can see you've got the flat cut at the top where the saw went across. This was cut last year. And what I'm waiting for is a collar to form. And you can see parts of it here already, but it's a different shading between that and the original trunk. And that's the demarcation of where the tree has already started what they call compartmentalization, i.e. clawing in all the stuff that's dead and protecting with new barriers the live stuff that it doesn't want to die back to. So as soon as that becomes more and more apparent, I will then get a saw, a very fine tooth saw, and cut that further down. And again, equally, when we look up here at the top, this is going to be the new apex, and please do not judge this as a tree yet. It has a long way to go. But I do notice the wire's cutting in, so that's another problem for another day. But again, here we're looking for a point where this part here has died off sufficiently and dried out that it creates a collar nearer this point here. Again, I'll get a fine tooth saw, cut back to it. Only after then can I go through the process of potentially using concave cutters and sharp blades to actually open up the cambium so I can get some roll on it. But these are the extremes, and there's another approach to the healing for something like this, something that has bigger wounds. We'll talk about that later. And probably now's a great time to actually remind you the sort of tools that you may need for something like this. Talked about the concave cutters. Depending on the size of the actual wound we're trying to heal, depends on whether you want big, small, or weeny. Also, you'll notice on there that I had a couple of woodworking tools, and I've got 6 of these. They're various gougers and wedges which I use for my dead wood work. Always useful to have something else that you can use to just help you remove the material that you don't want. And ultimately, you need a very sharp scalpel. It goes without saying that all of these need to have been sterilised, whether you use rubbing alcohol or something, so that when you actually start opening up that cambium, you don't immediately introduce horrible noxious diseases which are going to kill your tree. That's the sort of stuff you need. And of course, you don't go anywhere without your cut paste. And certainly if you've been watching my videos, you'll know that again, I'm very much a fan of Adam of Notion Bonsai's cut paste. I find it works really well, and having seen how he makes it, I feel confident that it's good for the environment and good for my trees too. Been using it for at least a year now, and none of them have turned up their roots and died. So there's our wound there, which is probably just under a centimetre. And if you look at it in terms of how it comes out in relation to the main trunk, it actually comes out by probably a couple of millimetres. So we need to go in at least a couple of millimetres in. First of all, I need to check which concave colours are going to be best, and it looks like these are probably going to be the ones I'll use, that I can get a nice strong grip and don't be surprised if you also get some associated tearing with it. I mean, really we try as best we can to avoid creating more wounds. There's a little split that's further up there, but again with old wood it's going to react differently, and that will heal over nicely. The key is to find out whether I've gone deep enough to take it below the level of the main trunk line. And I think we can clearly see that it's certainly gone in enough that when that rolls over it will roll relatively flush to the rest. And I think what you're seeing straight away, if you haven't got sharp tools, you are potentially going to create more problems. It's not insurmountable, but it is saying to me straight away that I might need to get some more concave colours. What I can do is with my knife just clean up that area a lot better. And the reason why we want that cleaned up is because we want that cambium to roll over, and you take your time, you know. You want that edge to be nice and sharp and clean. And then what we're going to need is a nice ball of cut paste, which will centre on our wound. And then working it slowly outwards, ensure that all those nicely opened up areas of cambium are covered. Now what happens is the moisture that's in the cut paste will slowly dry out over time. It's forming a lovely protective barrier from the elements, from yucky stuff getting in there while the tree does its own form of healing. And as I say, as that slowly starts to roll over and harden, you'll see this crack, and it will actually come away of its own accord. And normally you don't need to pull this away at a certain point to check it. It will literally dry out and just flake away. Then we repeat the process probably this time next year, until hopefully in maybe 3 years that will have rolled over at least half the size. But what I think we'll do now is get in there and see just how much of that stuff we can get out. Now, I didn't show you the hacking process of taking that out, but I have managed to remove a good chunk from there, and I probably want to continue to dig in a little bit deeper with a view that when that rolling happens it's going to look a lot more natural. Now there is a big problem already that is also going to have to be addressed, but I'm going to tell you why I'm not doing it now, and that relates to 1, 2, 3 branches, or 4 if you consider that, all coming from the same junction. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it does create other issues. But in terms of how much I've taken away, probably nearly half a centimetre has actually been dug out of there. And the only way to see if it's good enough is we'll put the cut putty on, and we'll wait 9 months and wait and see just how that healing takes place. So there we go. It's nicely covered with cut paste, both of those sites there. And oh, I've got, do you know what? While I'm at it, I've got this branch under here which I really will just prune away. And I might actually just prune that back as well. In fact, prune that. I love pruning Chinese elm because they've got so many buds you can see. You can prune right back to whichever ones you want. Anyway, so that's that wound there and that wound there. And do you know what? It's going to roll over uniformly, hopefully. In fact, we'll know when we have a look at it again in 12 months' time. I'll just do the 2 of them. But I talked to you about, I have potentially got a problem with the fact that I've really got a junction of 1, 2, 3 branches plus the leader going on. Now, ideally at some point I may well decide that I'm going to remove maybe this branch here on the inside of the bend. The reason why I do that is, yeah, that horrible word we keep hearing about, you know, adverse swelling or inverse taper. And you know what, I'm the first one to scream out that if it's not a show tree, well, even if it's a show tree, does it really matter? In nature, this sort of arrangement happens all the time. So if we want to continue with the more arty form of traditional bonsai, this is something we'll have to look at. But if not, and truthfully I actually like this, then don't worry, just get that wound healed nicely. But the advantage of having 1, 2, 3, 4 branches is all of them are healthy, all of them are large, and all of them are drawing life-saving sap and fluids and sugars up through the tree, and in particular in points all around that wound site. And that's one of the big issues of why sometimes wounds don't heal as you want them to, or heal unevenly. Here I've got sap that's going to be going this way, and up. All 3 corners, you can't have 3 corners, are getting good sap flow through them. So it's a good likelihood that that wound is going to heal A, uniformly, and B, quickly. And in terms of this one, that too, same principle applies. We've got a lot of juices going up there. That should also heal really, really well. Unlike the one I'm going to show you now. Now this one, this Katsura Maple, has 2 very, very large wounds on it. And they are totally different and are going to have a totally different heal rate or success rate. And the main reason is simply in this upper one, because there is only 1 branch on one side which is going to be drawing the sap through it. Ideally, for this to go properly, I need something on this side that would also be drawing sap. And the reality is that we're going to get probably good rollover here and very, very slow rollover here. But it will happen. So it's a bigger site, it's a bigger wound, but I still need to approach it the same way. So I need to get back in there and start hollowing that out, so to speak. I've got to be very, very careful though, not to go too close to the top there and end up killing off the top branch. Okay, so I've really managed to hollow that out a lot. There's a little bit of rough edging on the top, and it is a little bit of tearing up near this main branch. That's something I do have to be wary of, and I am going to take just a little bit of extra protection with. But again, I've got my cut paste, and I'm going to carefully apply that into the indent so that when it rolls over, it'll then push it off. Again, very carefully make sure I've got a nice even cover, and I think we're all going to be very, very interested to see just how well this does the job. And for those of you who haven't used cut paste, I always have a little cup of water beside me, not to drink, but to dip my fingers, because this stuff is so sticky when you roll that and you need it nice and damp and wet. And it is, take your time, make sure that you give your tree every opportunity to respond positively to the positive work that you're doing. So that's the first one done on this, and I think it's already going to be interesting to see when we compare and contrast Chinese elm, where we've got all the extra branches we need to help the healing, versus something like this which has only got branches on one side. Now I'm going to get in there with my concave cutters, and it's much harder wood, so I'm going to have to do a lot more nibbling and gnawing on this to try and take that down. And it may be that what the answer could be on that particular one is to actually make a hollow using my Dremel. But if I do that, we'll see that in another video. So again, here's an option when you've got an area that you want to do some wound healing that actually is either too big, too large, or pretty well impossible to do for a traditional healing. You might look at it and go, well, can I create a hollow? Is that an Oro or an Uru, something like that, and make that a part of the feature of, you know, you imagine 3 trunks coming up, 2 of them are surviving, the third one has just basically been taken away by a beaver or something. I'm still going to need to apply the same healing principles with cut paste, and I'll come back to you. And for those of you who are interested just how much I took out of the last one, I actually took quite a big wedge out. I mean, that's definitely 5 to 6 millimeters in thickness. I think it's a good thing to point out, this is potentially where the limitation of tools can come in. These concave cutters, although large, are not large enough or sufficiently the right enough tool to be able to do a concave cut in there. So that's actually quite flush. So that's going to roll with a standard roll around it, but it's nowhere near as ugly as it was before, that's for sure. So I'm going to try with that, but it may well be that I might get the Dremel on that in another year's time when I see how it heals, to actually start hollowing that out. And I think what is quickly becoming obvious and apparent to me now is how it has been possible for me to basically survive for the last 7-8 years on just one container of cut paste or cut putty. Because truly, yes, I've been putting it on some cuts, but I haven't really been using it as much and for the purposes that it's ideally designed for. So there you go, Jelle. I've followed your advice, taken it to heart. I've dealt with both the trees that you pointed out. Hopefully I did them to your satisfaction, or it sounds terrible when I say it like that. Hopefully I did them well enough. But if there's anything that you spotted in what I was doing there that you think is important to point out, you know where to put it, Jelle. Put it in the comments so that I can pin it to the beginning so that people know if what I've said is the right approach for these particular trees. Now, I am also going to talk about this one briefly because this is also a common problem we're going to face. And I said that we need a nice fine-bladed sword first of all. Sword? Fine-bladed saw to basically help us remove this part here where I know that it's compartmentalized enough. And what you would do is take your expensive but nice Japanese saw and making sure that you guide it properly. You cut above the line where the compartmentalization has taken place, because there it's going to be safe to remove all of that. So I'm going to get on and do that. And okay, we've removed that, and I think there's a load of you going, Zav, I thought that was supposed to be dead and all compartmentalized. And probably this is a good teaching point, because if we actually look at this and the discolorations and shading that I talked about, you can see that actually it was a little bit higher up than I thought, and I actually cut well below and into the live material. Now in this instance that doesn't matter, because I'm going to now be able to nibble out and create and do exactly what I've just done on the other two, and that will be fine. All the juices are going to be pulled up this way and that should heal nicely. The times when that is an issue is when you're talking about individual branches on small trees. Potentially you can cause yourself a lot of damage and a lot of harm if you go a little bit too low on your cutting. So I think that's a good point to put out. It won't affect this one, but be very, very sure that you've actually found the shoulder and you're cutting on the dead part of the wood. So despite the fact that it was still alive in many areas, I'm quite happy that I've managed to take that down a lot. I haven't been able to get in there and dig in deeper like I'd like to, but truthfully with the type of wound that is, there's only ever going to be one branch here anyway, so just so I get a nice uniform roll on it, which slowly rolls over more and more, I think that'll work out fine. With this one, I'm actually going to wait for that to die back a little bit further before removing, but again I can see areas there and I can do that. I think the good thing to notice is that with some trees, particularly here we've got a hornbeam, there's a chance that I'm going to get more budding coming out from these points here, especially now I've reopened the cambium, sealed it. The tree may well respond by putting out new shoots here, and I may well get that branch that I really want coming out this way to start a brand new design, because right now, as you've probably guessed, I've probably got absolutely no idea what I'm going to do with that. So what's the best way to optimize healing for this? Because that in its own right, yes, I've got loads of juices being drawn through here, which is going to do a pretty good job on healing. There really is one place only where that can heal quickly and effectively. And shall I show you where it is? Now, if we have the advantage of a growing bed, and ultimately what I could do is put that into the growing bed, that would give much greater efficiency for those branches to grow 2-3 feet tall quicker, because of the fact they're in the ground. And the example I'll use here will be on this beach. It's got a really obvious area of dead area here where I've taken the main trunk out, and I'll be looking to use this branch here and this big branch here to provide all the energy for healing this wound so it's nice and smooth and makes sense for the tree. So I'm just going to continue to nibble this down until I can get some cut paste on it. And then all I have done is I've put some wire on these lower branches so that we've got this actually facing up towards the sky, and hopefully then getting even more energy, growth and height in these important branches. Okay, well, having had quite a bit of fun down in the growing bed there, certainly early May it's looking very flush, but it's an ideal spot, as I was saying, to do the sort of healing that this in a bucket is going to take 2-3 times as long to do. Ultimately it all depends on how much growth I get in those branches, and this one growing down, well, that's probably not going to give me anywhere near the growth that I want to get some really good rapid healing. So the answer is, if you've got big wounds like that, if you want them to heal quickly and more efficiently and effectively, probably, if you can, get them in a big wooden box or get them into a growing bed or something bigger. Definitely feed them up, and whatever you do, don't prune those branches, because that is what's going to thicken things up and help with that healing process. Now, there's going to be instances where, just because of the nature of the tree or the bark and the way you've taken branches off haphazardly or without due care, you're going to get something that's pretty badly marked up. And this is when the obvious solution comes. We've got this lovely maple, very fine feminine form to it, and you think that looks lovely, until that is, you turn it around that way and you realise that there was a big branch there that's left a big horrible ugly wound. Here there's a very horrible wound which I've done some recent wound work on, but in terms of, it goes right around the whole circumference of the tree. If you look higher up there's more wounds. And I think I quickly realised, and I realised with this one before, that the amount of work and depth that I have to go to try and heal this one could actually end up killing it. I'll try. I've gone deeper there, get my cut paste on it and see if it rolls over more evenly and a little less well, a little bit more proud or flush with the actual branch that I've gone in, probably about 4 or 5 millimeter. Hopefully that'll be fine. We've got a lot of growth up top, so it should do that. I mean, ultimately there's no half measures. You can't gradually wound heal. I always say go in big and as safely and as much as you can to give the tree as much extra space to roll over and in without it causing such a big bulge. Here actually isn't too bad, and all I'll do there is give it a little bit more, open it up a little bit more, and relatively speaking it's not too bad. Now the final saving grace with most trees, even maples, is you can see on this it's starting to discolour at different places. Over time, as it gets older, the bark, if it's the right variety, will rough up, or in this case it will definitely go a rougher sort of pale beige colour. And if you've got your wounds relatively sized and healed well, it'll all blend in really nicely. So don't ever give up. This one has come a long way on. I mean, seriously, if you compare that one to this one, which again, same variety, same age, in fact got at the same time, has some truly horrendous ugly wounds here, which I attempted to heal a couple of years ago, but truthfully made a right old ham's fist of it. It's awkward and difficult now because of the relative location to this branch here, and even so we're getting some really nice roll over here, and as the bark gets thicker and marks up like it's doing there, then you know it may slowly become less obvious. But here's the thing, sometimes what you see is what you get, and if you can make the rest of the structure look fantastic, you can mask it by having leaves coming over. You can do any number of things. You can simply just change that from being the front to perhaps that being the front. Nothing's perfect in life, but all I'd say to you, and what I've certainly learned, is if at an early stage, when you've done that initial branch cut, you do everything possible to make the healing efficient, effective and possible, then you may well find you can avoid some of these unsightly wounds that really I can't do very much about. So while I consider the amount of work I've got to do healing the wounds on this really ropey Trident Maple, I hope it's been of use to you. As I say, this is the first year that I'm doing it properly and applying it to trees across different ranges. You know what, we're going to revisit all those trees in a year's time and see if there is a massive difference between the healing in a nursery bed or in a big plastic bucket, or indeed a smaller bonsai container, and perhaps decide whether or not it could have been done different, better, or how perhaps you would have done it. And I think knowing that we're going to be revisiting these in a year, now is a great time to whack down in the comments other things that I could have thought about, other techniques I could have applied. I've heard of people who sand down the bark of maples as a means of trying to, I don't know, to eradicate the scarring perhaps. How effective is that? Does that work? Are there other techniques? I've heard of people who use silver foil or silver-backed foil on wounds. Again, what's your experiences with those? This is a great forum to share that sort of knowledge, because certainly here in the Bonsai Retreat I don't have that sort of knowledge, but I definitely want to spread it if you've got it.
What did he just say?
The stuff that comes out of my mouth sometimes. Anyway, please leave me to work on this Trident Maple. If you want to see more of the trouble this thing's caused me, that's the video to watch. Otherwise, happy bonsai healing. Enjoy the sun. God bless. Cheers.